Well, hello, everybody. This is Tim Green with Rattle Magazine. Welcome to your critique of the week. It's Friday, December 10th. So glad you could join me. Hello to Nate Jacob. Let's see who we got. We got, like, nobody here right now. The, Facebook's new live producer is just not, or live dashboard is just has problems all over the place. I don't think anybody gets notifications anymore either. But anyway, we will have a fun critique of the week. I'm sure eventually some people will come in. Now, there's Dana Broadhead. Good to see you, Dana. We got 5 people live on Facebook Live now. I don't even, do they still call it Facebook Live? I guess they still call it Facebook Live. Let's see, over on YouTube. A few people watching on YouTube too. Well, today, this is your critique of the week. As always, there's Sharon Ferrante. Okay, so some people are starting to trickle in. So, as always, the point of the critique of the week is to give that workshop experience to people that don't have access to workshops. Usually, you know, if you have an MFA program or something like that, it's really fun and useful to have that feedback from other people. If you don't have that kind of access and don't have a good group of friends that are good writers that you can get together with regularly, you have the critique of the week to get that experience of letting strangers read your work and seeing what they think about it. And I think it's a very valuable thing to provide to writers, so please do leave your comments and share any thoughts you have about these poems as we go over them, because that really helps the authors a lot. Okay, so finally people are starting to come in. We got Mark Gruner, we got Jim Langford, we got Jerry Stephenson, Lois Perch-Villamere. Good to see you. I'm glad that some people are working. Tom Barlow's here. All right. So, yeah, let's see. Yeah, just Facebook is not as good as it used to be with video. I think they've kind of given up trying to compete with YouTube. So over on YouTube, though, we got Dick Westheimer and Clayton Clark. Good to see y'all. Okay, so today's, and I should say at the end of the show today, we will be doing a random drawing to see who the next round of participants are, too. So stick around for that. And if you'd like to, participate in the critique of the week, all you have to do, I'll put it on the screen here. Just go to Rattle's webpage, go to the critique of the week page, and you'll see a submittable button down here. Just click here to submit. And then you can submit 2 poems to have critiqued. We draw just at random at the end of the show about once a month to see who gets to go up next. I try to pair some poems that make it interesting for a good show too. So please do that. Now, let's move on to today's poems. And these poems are 2 poems by Annabelle Narey. And this is This is Interplanetary Contact. This is a 2-pager, then we have a short one. So let's see. Interplanetary Contact. We go to the beach equipped with a bag of miscellaneous clutter. Mask, snorkel, book lotion, towel, snack. I perch on an accommodating rock, a mundane sprawl of modest clientele of mostly middle age, reassuringly litter the scene. When suddenly, stepping out along starclad rocks, a host of glittery mortals materialize. Everyone feigns indifference as semi-naked sirens take ownership of the surrounding atmosphere and preen with the confidence of celestial cats screeching out in the self-satisfied glow of their own dazzle. Polished bones sleekly arch, directing angels with an artist's brush as towels are arranged and sculptured orbs point heavenward with an immodest gravity-defying magic. This is an education. One set even have piercings. I quietly consider the pain involved. Eye corners go into warp speed, husbands pretend to look away, wives silently judge. I decide not to swim. My excuse, this show is too good. I assume to be a satellite of these gorgeous planets. There are conditions which must be met. I assess the current placeholders. Bold displays of confident, tattooed muscles sculpt themselves accordingly. One embodies disinterest on a towel. Another dwarfs a beach chair with a tiny dog on the pedestal of his knee, pampering the bony, beribboned head with an apparent loving sincerity. I observe the murmuration of muffin tops, jelly flopping about on the beach, all apparently unaffected, but this I know is a mirage. Levels of self-confidence are fluctuating in this cinematic cosmos. An older lady, triumphant with nostalgia, joins the club, while another modestly tweaks a strap. Surely, a surly stranger stomps past the little dog now alone on the chair. With a flurry of growling savagery, there is a leaping launch of territorial umbrage. Time stands still as all gaze is compelled towards the tiny teeth of this event horizon. One kick could send Pipsqueak flying over the shrubs and into the car park, but Goliath stands grim, stoic, still as the snapping blur of tiny fury explodes with sparks around his feet. A goddess runs. We all quietly marvel. She scoops, scolds, says sorry. Heavy black feathery eyes bat out a Morse code of apology. But stone-faced man spins away, his silent mask gigantic with disdain. I actually snigger, just a little bit. Aphrodite raises her gaze, and there's a galactic supernova of eyelock. What's it like being you? I want to ask. What did you want to be when you were little? But instead, we just share the joke and smile at each other. That is Interplanetary Contact, the first of two poems we'll be looking at, the longer of the two, by Annabelle Narey. And Annabelle had a couple questions, so let me pull that up. I forgot to. So Annabelle, let's see. She says it's fairly early days. Let's see. So she talks about how she's just starting out with poetry. She's having a little imposter syndrome, she says. So one of the things I struggle with is layout and the meaningful use of punctuation. So let's keep in mind about that. This sometimes seems like a code that I don't have the key for. Occasionally I will feel it is okay, but then wonder if it is just contrived rather than meaningful. One of these poems is clearly too long and the title is just silly. Here I wanted to convey something light-hearted, but that contained some human truths. The other one, which we'll see later, is much shorter. Something I try to condense down to an elemental level. I would just be grateful for any critique on this path, even if during the session I have my hands over my eyes. So this is Annabelle Narey, and this is Interplanetary Contact. So let's look at the punctuation too as we go through this poem a little bit. So this is definitely a light poem, and I think it's entertaining in sections. I have a little bit of trouble following all the characters. I think that's the sort of issue with the poem for me. So Nate Jacob here already says it's a fun story, but it became too many words about halfway through. Lots of good images and sounds just need to be pared down, maybe way down to get it quicker. And he says also, welcome to imposter syndrome territory. At least it's not a lonely space. That's true. Yeah, I mean, me too as an editor. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I've been doing this for 18 years. So anyway, Interplanetary Contact. So the thing with a title like this is I find myself the whole time I'm reading the poem wondering if it's like, actually like a kind of science fiction type thing, or if it's like a metaphor. And I don't know if there's enough, like it's interesting to play with that idea of like not knowing if you're being literal or if it's sort of like there's a surreal kind of whimsy to not knowing exactly what's real and what's not, and what's like hyperbole and what's not. And I'm not sure it plays with that. There's not enough payoff to make the confusion that it brings justified. So I'm not sure. So that's the thing I want to look at as I sort of reread it, for the second time here. And we'll look at the punctuation and things like that as we go too. But Interplanetary Contact. We go to the beach equipped with a bag of miscellaneous clutter: mask, snorkel, book, lotion, towel, snack. And so first of all, my main advice just in general with punctuation is just to use regular punctuation like it is, like it's like prose. In most cases, that's the better way to do, because then you don't have the kind of confusion that things, because we, all readers are going to be readers that read a lot because everybody reads, and we know what to expect. And so when we don't see what we expect, it adds confusion. So if you look back, even if you roll back to the first time I read this, I didn't pause much. I had a little line break scan pause between book and lotion. So in my mind for a second, it was like book lotion, which is actually kind of funny, an interesting idea if there was lotion for your books, but that's not what it's meant to be. So keep regular punctuation as if it were just prose. Like, don't worry about punctuation too much, because in most cases, unless you're really good at playing with that and like manipulating people with it and using it on purpose in strange ways, which not many people do, then it makes it really difficult to, well, not difficult, but it's easy to throw people off the track like that, and then you're just adding unnecessary confusion into the system. So you just use regular punctuation. We'll point out where it's missing, and I think that's about it. Just add the punctuation that's supposed to be there if it were prose. So anyway, so we get this clutter: the mask, snorkel, book, lotion, towel, snack. I perch on an accommodating rock because it's interplanetary contact. Every time I see something like I perch on an accommodating rock, I'm wondering like who's perched, you know, and like am I an alien or you know, especially because perched is a sort of interesting way to say it. It's almost bird-like. Am I a bird-like creature? I don't know. A mundane sprawl of modest clientele of mostly middle-age, a hyphen there. A mundane sprawl of modest clientele of mostly middle-aged reassuringly litter the scene. So I don't know about the reassuringly. I'd probably cut words like this. This is a thing that is kind of cluttery. And the clientele is an interesting, it's an interesting choice of words. So it could be setting up, you know, it's a very sort of a formal business-like word, you know, and so it sort of sets up as if you're like a tourist, you know, guide or something. And then it's another thing though that doesn't follow through enough to make it so it's sort of like when you get to a word like this, it's almost like a branch in the path in the woods, you know, and you could go down this path where it's using this voice the whole time, as if you're like a tour guide showing off the people that are there, you know, and I think that would be cool, but then it doesn't really pick up later. So I think the other thing to keep in mind is who is speaking. Like, you kind of always want to imagine a poem in most cases as someone specific speaking to someone specific, and that helps you keep the register and the use of language and diction consistent throughout the poem. And so at this point, I'm imagining like a tour guide or some kind of like host at a resort or something when I see clientele. And if you want to imagine that through the whole poem as you're writing it, then that's a really cool thing to do and really interesting. But it feels like it jumps to sort of more childish voice perspective. You know what I mean? So it doesn't really fit there. So it's sort of actually like in your head, imagine that someone is speaking this. Maybe it's not you, or maybe it is you inside someone else. But imagine an actual speaker with an actual listener, and that'll help clear up these kind of inconsistencies. Okay, so when suddenly stepping out along starclad rocks, a host of glittery mortals materialize. Again, we get the mortals, and they're materializing. And so because it's interplanetary contact, are they actually materializing? And I don't know, there's sort of a, you know, it's playing with that concept, and it's kind of fun to do. Like that ambiguity of not knowing if it's just a way of speaking, or if it's actually like they're teleporting down from the spaceship to the beach, like on Star Trek. It's kind of a fun thing to play with. You just have to kind of let us in on the joke eventually, you know? Everyone feigns indifference as semi-naked sirens take ownership of the surrounding atmosphere. And so here again, too, the sirens, you know, maybe sirens would be interplanetary, but it's sort of like mixing genres a little bit. Let's see. So I don't know. But I mean, then we get Aphrodite and things like that later in the poem. So it seems more like gods and things like that than planets. So maybe like interdimensional contact or something like that. Let's see. Of the surrounding atmosphere and preen with the confidence of celestial cats stretching out in the self-satisfied glow of their own dazzle. See, excellent descriptions here. Like when they materialize, and even though I'm not sure if it's literal or figurative, it still works really well to describe the sirens this way. You can imagine it being both, which is kind of cool. And these are well-written descriptions. Everyone feigns indifference. So don't need a comma there. of the surrounding atmosphere, and you don't need a comma there either. These are comma splices, because they're what do they call it? See, I'm not bad. I'm not good with all those different explanations of things, but it's not a new sentence that's being connected with a comma, because the subject sort of leaps over the and. It's the same. The sirens are the ones preening. So if you had the word they, and they preen with the confidence, then you would need the comma. But since the subject is carrying past the and, it's still the same. There's a phrase for it, the kind of clause it is. A subordinate clause, is that what it is? Or I don't know, whatever they call that stuff. Indefinite? I don't know. I literally missed the year because I moved schools. I missed the year where we did grammar and sentence structure in like 7th grade or 6th grade or whatever that was. So I never learned that stuff. And we never, in college, they never taught us that stuff either. So I don't know. But that comma shouldn't be there. And preen with confidence of celestial cats stretching out in the self-satisfied glow of their own dazzle. I love that line, that self-satisfied glow of their own dazzle. It's a great description. Polished bones sleekly arch, directing angels. With an artist's brush, his towels are arranged, and sculptured orbs point heavenward with an immodest gravity-defying magic. Again, gravity-defying, I need a hyphen there. But yeah, more great description. See, this is where the poem comes alive, is at these two stanzas where you start describing. So I think maybe, I think maybe the we up here introduces like too many people, kind of. And maybe you could just start out with the mortals materializing and then everyone feigning indifference and just jump right in the scene, because this is where the poem really takes off in these descriptions here, which are really cool. Some people have already mentioned how nice, and vivid the descriptions are, which really is drawing us into the poem here. This is an education. One set even have piercings. I quietly consider the pain involved. So we have the I, and we have to, let's see. So over here, Kathy Gibbons says starfish on the rocks, and Dana Broadhead says I was thinking starfish. However, that doesn't work with the title. So this is what we're talking about with potentially being starfish, and I think that works too. It's kind of there's an ambiguity of like how literal we're being here, and that runs throughout the poem, which is kind of interesting. I think it's fun to play with. Let's see. And so Kathy Gibbons says, I'm seeing young nubile women materializing amongst the middle-aged, hence another species. Yeah, that's the thing. It's really cool to play with, I think, that you don't know if we're being literal and we're actually in some other dimension where like people are materializing, or if it's all figurative language for the difference between people's like bodies and shapes and personalities, and how different we are as human beings. So definitely something I can relate to because I don't fit in anywhere at the beach. Eye corners go into warp speed. Husbands pretend to look away. Wives silently judge. I decide not to swim. I would cut them my excuse and just say the show is too good. I assume to be a satellite of these gorgeous planets. There are conditions which must be met. Maybe a dash there. Again, you just want regular punctuation like you would in prose. I assess the current placeholders. Bold displays of confident, tattooed muscle sculpt themselves accordingly. What embodies disinterest on a towel, another dwarfs a beach chair with a tiny dog on the pedestal of his knee, pampering the bony, beribboned head. I trip over the bony, beribboned head. It's an interesting description, but I trip over it. So I play that. It's just a little too much too much alliteration, and then beribboned is a strange word too. So it's kind of like bony, beribboned, with an apparent loving sincerity. So again, these are really good descriptions when you get all these different characters that are showing up the beach. It's a really fun poem at that point. Let's see. Sharon Fronte suggests the show is good as a title. That's interesting, yeah. The lines, Mark Gruner says the lines of pain involved in the piercings doesn't go anywhere. I think it has possibilities, though. Yeah. So let me look over on YouTube what everyone's saying there. So Dick Westheimer says, an example, an adjective that could be cut in favor of an image is accommodating rock, which was back up here, accommodating rock. If accommodating is important, then show me what it looks like. If it is not important, leave it out. Exactly. Where did that go? Yeah, the accommodating rock. A good example of the kind of clutter that you just don't need. You want to move through images and scenes really quickly. It's told to keep our interest, which you do a much better job of down here. So D. Coleman says, I love the last 3 lines of the second stanza. Yeah, these are great lines. I love that. Patricia Casey says, angle like 90 degrees, not angel. Did I say angel where it's angle? Let's see. Where was that? Yeah, I can't really see. It's hard to jump back to a word. Maybe I misread it. Or maybe it was a typo. Directing angles. Oh, yeah. I wrote it wrong. I read it wrong. Polished bones, sleekly arched, directing angles with an artist's brush, his towel. See, I have these gods and things and supernatural beings in my head. So that was, what's it called? A spoonerism or something? Or, I don't know. Angles with an artist's brush. His towels are arranged in sculptured orbs paint. Yeah, they're just great descriptions, though. Let's see. Yeah, so we get all these really good descriptions of the people that are showing up. And who was it that said, Sharon Friendly said the show is good, could be the title. And that's the good part of the poem is the show of different people we have and this sort of not knowing if we're being figurative or not. It's really fun to play with that. I observe the murmuration of muffin tops, jelly flopping about on the beach, all apparently unaffected by this I know. But this I know is a mirage. Levels of self-confidence, I need a hyphen there, of self-confidence are fluctuating in the cinematic cosmos. An older lady, triumphant with nostalgia, joins the club, while another modestly tweaks a strap. So again, these are good descriptions, but they lose that this sort of otherworldly stuff that is here. And so I wonder if maybe we could use some kind of otherworldly creature in this description too, just for the consistency of it. A surly stranger stomps past the little dog, now alone in the chair, with a fury. So again, we need a comma here. The little dog now, maybe not a comma there, actually. Because the stranger stomps past the little dog, now alone in the chair. Yeah, so maybe a little comma here if you find that trippy. With a flurry of growling savagery, there is a leaping launch of territorial umbrage. So again, the leaping launch, this is one place where that diction from the beginning comes back. Like that sort of formal tourist guide kind of thing. I feel like this kind of language only appears a couple times in the poem. And so I would cut them, but you could also think of like using that language the whole time, which would make it fun too. Time stands still as all gaze is compelled towards the tiny teeth of this event horizon. So somebody said, let's see. Nate Jacob says jelly flopping is my new favorite phrase. Thank you. I love that too. And Bev Wendell Atherstone says, so it's a nude beach. Are they aliens? That's the thing. I don't know. I think that it's figurative, but I don't know, which is just fun. Somebody mentioned the dog. Where did that comment go? Somebody mentioned that the dog is not. Yeah, the second dog is not introduced clearly. I think the second dog is the first. So this was Mark Gruner says the second dog isn't introduced clearly, I think. And I think this little dog is the same little dog that was here. So maybe the connection, wherever that was, somebody had a little dog. Where was it? Little dog, where are you? Return of the way, warp speed, towel. Where was I thought I swear there was a little dog on a beach towel. Yeah, there, the tiny dog on a pedestal, at the very bottom. A tiny dog on the pedestal is knee. So this is the person with the beach chair. And so this is a tiny dog, but now the person is gone and only the dog is there. And so the dog is protecting that territory. The little dog now alone in the chair. With a fury of growling savagery, there's a leaping launch of territorial umbrage, which I would cut that just because it's not consistent with the rest of the language, although it's kind of fun if it is. Time stands still as all gaze is compelled towards the tiny teeth of this event horizon. And the event horizon works because of that interplanetary contact title, which I kind of like. I don't know. One kick could send Pipsqueak flying over the shrubs and into the car park, but Goliath stands grim, stoic, still as the snapping blur of tiny fury explodes with sparks around his feet. So again, I feel like this is figurative language for a human real scene that's happening. Like I think it was Kathy Gibbons who had that kind of interpretation, and I think that's what's going on here. I think we get these mythological. We get Aphrodite, we get Goliath, we have the sirens, which is sort of a different space than space, you know? And so one thing I would do with this poem is sort of pick one or the other. If we're going to be in like the mythological realm, stick to that. And if we're going to be in like a space alien type realm, which we are at some points too, then stick with that. And otherwise it just gets a little confusing. So, so describe them as if they're aliens or describe them as if they're mythological creatures and gods and things, and like pick one or the other. So here we have a goddess runs. We all quietly marvel. She scoops, scolds, says sorry. I kind of like the aliens better of the two, just because you see mythological characters so often, but you don't see many aliens. And that maybe gives you more freedom to play too. Anyway, we all quietly marvel. She scoops, scolds, says sorry. Heavy black feathery eyes bat out a Morse code of apology. But stone-faced man spins away, his silent mask gigantic with its stain. I love gigantic with its stain. It's a great description. I actually snigger just a little bit. Aphrodite. See, so since we're referring to these people as sort of mythological gods and goddesses and things, it makes it a little. It's like an extra layer of like keeping track. So you sort of have to pay attention to that too. There's just a lot. I'm sorry that there's a lot going on in this poem. So it's hard to explain all the different little elements. But it gets a little bit. So we introduced Aphrodite as a goddess who runs, and so there's a moment when I say Aphrodite raises her gaze, where I have to think like, who are we talking about here? It's the goddess that runs, and she scoops up the little dog. And that means that she was also, right? Wasn't, because the little dog is the same little dog as down here. So the one who embodies disinterest on a towel. Well, no, I guess another dwarfs the beach chair with a tiny dog. So this is the one that dwarfs the beach chair with a tiny dog? Who scoops up the tiny dog later? I don't know. This is what I mean where it's a little hard to follow. Aphrodite raises her gaze, and there is a gigantic supernova of Ilok. What's it like being you, I want to ask. But and so here is the sort of the heart of the poem. And in the comments that Annabelle sent, she said, one of these, let's know where to go. Occasionally I feel it's okay, but wonder if it is too contrived rather than meaningful. And this is where the meaning is right here. Is it what's it like being you? So when you come to that line, which a lot of times a line like that will come out spontaneously as you're writing, and you kind of realize like what is compelling you to write about this subject. And when that happens, what you want to do is sort of carve the poem down to get to that line. Because that's what it's really about. Like all this stuff is like how I don't fit in. Like, what's it like to be all these like glittering, strange people that I can't relate to at the beach? And so this is the meaning of the poem. So it has meaning for sure because of lines like this, and it was building up to this the whole time too. So I think that works really well. What did you want to be when you were little? And so in this line too, what did you want to be when you were little? Sort of, throughout the poem, I get the sense of, because there are a few lines that do this kind of thing, of it being like a kid's experience. Like we arrive, so the family's arriving at the beach, and it's a child, like seeing this kind of stuff for the first time. I think there's a line about like, it's a lesson or something like that somewhere. And so a lot of it's from the perspective of a kid, and then some of the things have these phrases like, the tiny teeth of this event horizon and the territorial umbrage and things like that, which are much more sophisticated in their diction. And so what I would recommend is, now that you sort of know what the heart of the poem really is and what's going on, would be to focus on that. So, we arrive, like my family arrives at the beach, right, entirely thinking of a young, a child's perspective. So like right through that eye, like don't use phrases like this that a child wouldn't use. But just sort of try to embody the child who's observing the scene, so that you can get to these images at the end. What did you want to be when you were little? Which implies that the speaker is little too. Like what were you like when you were like me? But instead we just share the joke and smile at each other. And I think maybe you could cut this. I think maybe this works as an ending. And so if we just sort of imagine this, which I think is definitely a poem worth continuing and working on. I think it's just a matter of inhabiting the speaker of this poem, which is a child arriving at the beach, seeing all these things that it doesn't, the kid doesn't quite understand. And it's like amazing and fascinating and strange and all that stuff. Describe it through one frame or the other, either the mythological stuff or the alien more type stuff. And then get to that last conclusion while telling the scene. And so it's a poem that has a lot of substance and a lot to work with. So I'm kind of looking forward to, hopefully we maybe someday get to see a revision of it, but it's an interesting poem. And I've been just rambling on and on. Let's go to the other short poems. So I have until 15 after the next hour today, but we got to get through everything. So this is the other poem. And again, this is Annabelle Narey. Yeah, that's an E. Annabelle Narey. Overheard in the woods. And this is a short poem, so we'll just do it quick. Overheard in the woods. The arboreal mood these days is one of restless weariness. So, think I might take off. Shall we dance? Some elements of this falling I feel is rather familiar. Ah, hello again, soft earth. So this is a very interesting little poem. Actually, I really like the idea of the arboreal mood. I wonder if that could be the title. The arboreal mood. These days, I mean, Overheard in the Woods is a work, it's a title that works too. Anyway, these days is one of restless weariness. So I think I might take off. Shall we dance? Some elements of this falling I feel is rather familiar. Ah, hello again, soft earth. I love the ending too. Geez, that's supposed to be a D. Good. But I like that. Hello again, soft earth. That idea that the tree tried to dance. The tree was feeling restless, tried to dance, and then re-meets the earth that it hadn't touched. If you imagine a tree kind of anthropomorphizing it, hasn't touched the earth in so long. I really like that. And this is short already, but I wonder if it could even be shorter. And I always recommend for super short poems, who I gotta have in the Rattlecast. I keep forgetting to ask him. But Mike White, if you go to rattle.com and look for Mike White poems, we've published maybe like 6 of them or something. He's got a couple books, but he does poems that are this short. This is just the last one. Death, she brushed it aside and brushed it aside, as we all did the fly that kept landing in her casket. So just a very, very quick, short poem. And he has a lot of these. The way, the fourth leg of the dog, with now only 3, was the in the way one he lifted in order to pee. So this is kind of like one sentence utterance poems. He's got a bunch of these. He's got some slightly longer, and he's got some regular sized poems. But that's something to look at for an example of what you might do with this. This whole the Shelby dance thing, I think, is a little too. It throws you off a little bit. Like, it's such a simple concept and idea. So I think here, just tell the story really quick, maybe even in one sentence, like Mike White does in those poems. Instead of like overheard, like it's a conversation, because then you have to kind of get confused about who's saying it and shall we dance. So if it was like the arboreal mood these days is one of weariness, so the trees try to dance, something like that. I mean, say it better than that, but some of the elements of this falling I feel is rather familiar. So something about the falling feeling familiar, and then this cool ending, and just have it be like one quick sentence that runs through it, because the shall we dance, there's a little, even though it's really short, there's a little bit of clutter here that's not necessary and kind of throws you off a little bit and makes it a little bit confusing. So for this one, I would just run right through it. It's a really interesting little poem, and look up those examples by Mike White. Let me see what people are saying about this poem, then we'll move on to the next one. Kathy Gibbons says, I see the speaker dancing with falling leaves. David Cook says, I like the sound similarity of familiar and earth. It sets up the ending to feel on beat. I agree, yeah. Sharon Frente says, so I think the woods would have me take off. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So just sort of just tell it straight instead of like through dialogue that we're trying to overhear, because then we have to sort of position who's speaking. It's too much. Nate Jacobs says overheard is a sweet mood. Good description there. Mark Gruner says there's so much left out in the second poem that it's very hard to get a sense of it. Yeah, I think, if you tell the story really straight, it can be sort of a extended, even though it's briefly extended metaphor for whatever you want to apply to it, which to me feels kind of like it feels maybe just because that's what a lot of poems are these days, but it feels kind of a lockdown pandemic type thing. And so how do you relate to that as a reader and as a speaker? It's an interesting thing to think about. Over on YouTube. Yeah, Clayton Clark says, yes, the hello again, soft earth. And Mike White's great. Hang on 1 second. I'm going to answer this. This might be important. All right. Yeah, that was nothing, so don't worry about that. Anyway, yeah, Dick Westheimer says, yeah, I like this one. Lands well. Clayton Clark says, just a little stronger imagery. The woods. Yeah, so maybe a little more imagery, but look at Mike White as an example of how to pull off a poem like this that's so short. I mean, and he has a whole book. It's like, I think it's like How to Make a Bird with Both Hands is the title. He's got a whole book of those. You can just Google him for a bunch of poems that are all over the place. I think he's really, right now, he's one of the best at doing this kind of thing, what this poem is trying to do. So look at him as an example and play with that, because I think this has a lot. I just love that ending. All right, so let's look at the second poem now, as it's 9:39 for me, or 12:39 in the East Coast, or wherever you are. 39 past the hour, that's why they say that. And this next poet is... this is Brian Broñola. Role-playing game of reality. Welcome to the chess of life, the scorching cosmos of liberty from hate, where people strife for empathy as cradle of energy. Be sentient of time, like the multiverse's stars cruising a charcoaled crime, as you grasp for your desires, poses with you the love to perforate the bosom of grown, freaky rats that may rob your binding propitious crown. Beware of perfumed warriors, that scent of pleasant lies, trapping you with abaca fibers of depression as the prize. Don't be juggled by success, thinking it will at least repair the frames in your premises of pictures of joy so rare. Meditate all of these that are written in this snow, great child, to gain peace as you play with death now. That is role-playing game of reality. And so the language in this poem, there's sort of like a stiltedness to it. Partly because it's trying to fit the rhymes, which make it a little difficult to follow for me. So welcome to the chess of life, the scorching cosmos of liberty from hate, where people strife for empathy as cradle of energy. So this feels very like the strife to life rhyme feels really crammed in there and forced. And then where people strife for empathy as cradle of energy. It's just the way that it's not a natural way of speaking, which makes it difficult to read, is the issue here, and it's because it's trying to fit everything in. So one of the things that we always say, this in general usually is good advice, is write like you talk. That's a motto that Jack Gilbert always uses, or not Jack Gilbert, Jack Grapes, I mean. And because there's a natural beauty in music to speech, and what we love usually in poems that use rhyme and metaphor, I mean rhyme and meter, are that the rhyme and meter fit with natural speech, and it feels on the one hand natural, and on the other like elevated into this like form, which is a really cool concept. But to like squeeze a poem in so that the rhymes make sense doesn't have that same effect. And so it's more important that you write like you talk, and write in a natural way, because there's a natural music to speech. There's natural rhythms that we all know and we use as speakers of a language. Be sentient of time, like the multiverse's stars cruising a charcoal time as you grasp for your desires. So this whole poem is sort of an advice kind of setup. So it's a speaker talking to you, somebody unnamed, and it might be the reader. It might be, a friend or a child or somebody who needs to hear this. It might be that kind of thing. But that's clear that at least that is what's being done with the poem. So there's no confusion about that. It's just sort of an advice to you, which is fine for that setup of like where we are. We don't have to really wonder where we are in this poem. So that's a good way to start it. Possess with you the love to perforate the bosom of grown, freaky rats that may rob your blinding, propitious crown. What does the word propitious mean? That's one of those words that I never actually know. I always sort of, in the context, you can kind of tell. Propitious. That is giving or indicating a good chance of success. Okay. Yeah, so, let's see. Your blinding, propitious crown. Beware of perfumed warriors that scent of pleasant lies, trapping you with abaca fibers of depression as the prize. Don't be juggled by success, thinking it will at least repair the frames in your premises of pictures of joy so rare. Meditate all of these that are written in the snow, great child, to gain peace as you play to death now. So again, so the you becomes a child, maybe a great child. We get the snow now, which is an interesting, not rhyme, non-rhyme, or near rhyme, or slant rhyme, or something. Let's see. Let's see. So David Cook says, I wonder if the poem was written in first person would smooth out the voice and take the preachy feel I'm getting from it from the command form. Let's see. Oh, strife should be strive. Ah, okay. So up here, Mark Gruner says strife should be strive. Strive for empathy. Yeah, that might just be a typo. Yeah. Yeah, good call. So that might be a typo, where people strive for empathy. That makes a lot more sense. As cradle of energy. So Nate Jacobs' role-playing reads a bit like a translation or an overused thesaurus trying to fit words into a message. Yeah, it kind of does. I mean, that's the stilted sort of feel of it. And again, I think the main thing is just to write like you talk, like have, the way that we speak is poetic on its own. And one of the tricks is to just utilize that. let's see. And Mark Gruner says too poetic for me. Yeah, it's forcefully poetic is the issue. Let's see, over on YouTube. Okay. So, yeah. So this poem, I don't know, role-playing game of reality. So it's interesting in the advice that it's giving. And I would just say, write like you talk. Like try to have a more natural feel. Sharon Fronte suggests I would change that to chess of life. Yeah, so there is this thing too, like we were talking about in the last critique, this first phrase, welcome to the chess of life. Like that's the kind of natural type phrase that we're talking about, like wanting more of when we say write like you talk. Welcome to the chess. Like that's something someone would actually say. And that's the voice that you kind of stick with. And if you could keep that voice the whole time, imagine, like we said in the last poem too, imagine an actual speaker actually speaking this to somebody. Like, don't be abstract, like I'm writing a poem and this is something special. Like, keep it in that sense of like, this is actually somebody talking to somebody else. And if you can get rhyme into that, that's great. But we want to keep in that voice, welcome to the chess of life. This is what's going to happen. This is the way that I would speak. If I was saying, welcome to the chess of life, this is how it would continue. Is sort of a monologue to somebody. I think this line is the key right here. And it's the key to the voice of the poem. Welcome to the chess of life. Let's see. So, Anna says it's a very decorative use in language. Dave Cook says kind of a carnival barker voice. Let's see. Jenny Middleton says, I think it would be nice to know who is giving the advice. Yeah. I mean, it might, and that's the kind of thing that you could, because we do wonder about that, like who's giving this advice to who. And so that could always be told in the title. My advice to this person, or this person's advice to this person, So, who is giving advice? Make it the title. And then we know what's going on. We don't have to wonder and try to piece it together. Clayton Clark says, yes, I'm having a bit of a trouble following. If you is me, the reader, I feel a bit left out by being told what I should do. What is charcoal crime? Yeah, there's some interesting phrases in here. I like the abaca fibers. Where was the charcoal? Yeah, the cruising a charcoal crime. That's a cool line. I don't know where to put it. Be sentient of time, like the multiverse of stars, cruising a charcoal crime as you grasp for your desires. That's another phrase, though, that works really well, and it's a very smoothly delivered line, too. Cruising a charcoal crime. I like that. I don't know what it is exactly. Yeah. I think the stars sort of burning themselves out like charcoal would, maybe. Anyway, so this is my advice for that poem, is to write more like you talk. Let's see what the other one is like. And again, this is a poem. This is a little longer one, I think. I think this one's 2 pages. And this is Brian Broñola, 2,000 pesos, $40 US. The year was 2019. The night was cold and breezy. Everyone were busy buying Noche Buena groceries, cars buzzing in and out. The streets was brightened up by lanterns shaped like twinklers in the sky. There was a woman walking and searching for the nearest money puking machine. She found one, but inside the booth there were already 3 men ejaculating from it. One was wearing a charcoal hoodie, and the jersey shorts was maroon as red wine. The second was having 4 eyes, a head that shines like a sun, clothed with the ocean shirt and high-knee shorts. Lastly, the third man was like mourning in a funeral, starting from his greasy long hair and the turban that holds it. Shirt, 3/4 pants, and slippers were all black as Coca-Cola. The woman's patience was tested and standing there for about half an hour. She wonders what's taking them so long when she heard them say, I have waited for this. I have waited this for ages, brother. I can afford now, my child, a pair of shoes to wear. Oh, I get 2,000 pesos out of this. We can buy lots of foods. Our boss is so gracious in giving us a bonus. I will text my wife, for it is spaghetti she wants for this coming Christmas. The woman's frown face was lost. It shines like Edison's bulbs and blushes like pink roses. Out of little gold in 3 men's palms, she saw genuine smiles. She told herself that these men aren't like others. When given bread, asks for burger. Oh, what a great lesson of the true meaning of appreciation, unthinkable satisfaction. So this is, again, 2,000 pesos, 40 US dollars. And this one tells a much more straightforward story, which is much more just pleasurable to read because it tells a story. So see how, more simple communication just makes a poem more interesting, actually. The year was 2019. The night was cold and breezy. Everyone were busy buying Noche Buena. So again, this poem feels like it might be a translation. Because there's some, this were should be was. Everyone was busy. Noche Buena groceries, cars buzzing in and out. The streets, that should be were, brightened. And it's interesting, though, because you wonder how much that might be intentional. Like it sort of adds a flavor to the writing, though, too. The streets was brightened up by lanterns shaped like twinklers in the sky. The one thing about it that's nice, if you're like reading a published poem, is that that it's intentional because, people have looked over it and asked the author and made edits. And so you don't have to wonder. But in a critique of the week, you don't know, like we saw with the strife versus strive. We don't know if that's a typo or if it's intentional. If it is intentional, it's an interesting sort of, voice to use. Lanterns shaped like twinklers in the sky. There was a woman walking and searching for the nearest money puking machine. The money puking machine is interesting. She found one, but inside the booth, there were already 3 men ejaculating from it. And I think this word choice, could be different. 3 men ejaculating from it makes you think of masturbation. And I don't think that's what's going on here. So maybe, something simpler there. One was wearing a charcoal hoodie and the jersey's shorts. Again, this should be were maroon as red wine. The second was having 4 eyes, a head that shines like a sun, clothed with the ocean shirt and high knee shorts. So, so I like that. Good descriptions there. Lastly, the third man. I don't think you need lastly. The third man was like mourning in a funeral. Again, great description. So there's really cool lines a lot of the times in this poem, starting from his greasy long hair and the turban that holds it. We get the tense change. It goes to present there. So that might be a typo, or it might, but it's something that should be corrected, I think, in this case for sure. Should be held it. Shirt, 3/4 pants, and slippers were all black as Coca-Cola. The woman's patience was tested and standing there for about half an hour. She wonders what's taking them so long when she heard them say, I've waited this for ages, brother. So again, this feels like a typo, like maybe here or something like that. I can afford now, my child, a pair of shoes to wear. Oh, I got 2,000 pesos out of this. We can buy lots of foods. Our boss is so gracious in giving us a bonus. So this money, let's see. I'm having trouble following what this. I love the money puking machine. I don't know if it's like an ATM machine or if it's some kind of like what do you call it? The one-armed bandit thing that you pull at the casino. You can tell I don't go to casinos very often. What are those things called? The casino machine, slot machines. That's the word. Yeah, is it a slot machine? I don't know. I'm not sure. But anyway, Our boss is so gracious in giving us a bonus. So I think it's the ATM machine. I'm not sure if, in that case, why are they taking so long and why are they all in one booth at once? I'm not sure. So I'm having a little trouble following that. I will text my wife for it is spaghetti she wants for this coming Christmas. The woman's frowned face was lost. It shines like Edison's bulbs and blushes like pink roses. I love that Edison's bulbs. It's a cool little line there. Out of the little gold in 3 men's palms, she saw genuine smiles. She told herself that these men aren't like the others when given bread. Okay, that's a scam. Sorry, our furnace is out, so I'm like... Okay. So I have the phone on, like which I usually don't. I'm making sure the furnace people come because it's 26 degrees out and the furnace is not working. Anyway, she told herself that these men aren't like others when given bread. Asks for burger. So again, this feels like an idiom in another language, which is like translated directly. When given bread, asks for burger. I mean, that's a cool phrase, but I don't think that's a normal idiom in English. So we get like the literal translation of it, which is kind of interesting. Oh, what a great lesson of the true meaning of appreciation, unthinkable satisfaction. And so this poem ends kind of with the ending is kind of summarizing, which we tend to suggest not doing, because if there's summary, it just sort of pulls you out of the poem, the surprise and the meaning and stuff that comes from it. So maybe find a different ending, or maybe just end here. So anyway, let's see what everybody else's comments are on this one. So Sharon Frentis is maybe a coin machine. Kathy Gibbons says, are they robbing the machine? Yeah, so I think we're all having trouble figuring out. So Tom Biola says he's attempting dialect, but it sounds forced. Is it, or is it just actually a translation? Like at first I was thinking that it was an attempt at dialect, but I wonder if it's just a poem originally written in Spanish or something, and then translated to English, and so some of the translations are off. The idiom there at the end, which isn't one that we're familiar with, makes me think that. This sounds like an expression that people might say in a different language that doesn't carry over. So I wonder if the whole poem is translated, but I don't know. We didn't get any notes about this, so we just got it like it is. Yeah, so Mark Gruner says the second poem is better, but marred by the grammatical issues. It does feel like a translation. Sharon Frentis says, great turn from being annoyed, then finding out the gratitude of the one she waits for. Yeah, like that's the thing, that the poem, as Mark Gruner said, it works better than the first because it actually tells a story. And the story has some meaning to it. So we love hearing stories. It's one of the things that humans just love, is hearing other people's stories. And that's why we do poetry, really, so we can hear each other's stories. And this tells a story. And it tells a story with an arc like a story or a novel would. I mean, the woman's here, all this stuff is happening, then she sees these men at the machine. I'm not so quite sure, and I don't think anybody else is, what the machine is, but they're getting money out of the machine. Somehow she's annoyed, and then she realizes how much it means to them, how important it is. And so that all works as a story. David Cook says greasy here. Greasy, starting from his greasy long hair. Where'd that go? Yeah, it comes close to a slur or cliche bordering on stereotype. So yeah, maybe cut that word. That's a good point. Like, you don't want to sort of, punch down on people either. So Kathy Gibbons says, are they robbing the machine? And this is like the gift of the Magi kind of story. Sharon French says maybe a coin machine. Maybe Jerry Steffen says maybe they are paid by e-transfer, same boss awaiting payment, like how she paints them. Yeah, the good descriptions here, and that's what I think, because of the boss, like you mentioned, Jerry. Like, because there's a boss, and they're thankful for the money the boss gave, they say. But then that doesn't really explain why it took so long and why they're all together. I mean, maybe if they all work together, that's why they're together. But I don't know what the delay is necessarily, but maybe the speaker doesn't either. So Bella Anna says, I like to think about the narrator and why they chose to make their observations. This feels more clear than in the previous poem, which felt beyond my immediate grasp, but I'm not sure of the overall mood or if it's consistent. The descriptions of the people are vivid, but it's somewhat a little unsettling. I also agree it does feel like a translation. So David Cook and Sharon Frontier agreeing that the last stanza you could just cut and end with the when given bread ask for burger. Here's a thought. Bev Wendell Atherstone says maybe machine to change dollars to pesos. Oh, which would go back to the title. So it's a that makes sense. Okay, so this is a money conversion machine which changes dollar to pesos. Yeah, there you go. So thanks for clarifying that. That didn't register. No pun intended. Yeah. So waiting for the. So I still don't know why it's taking so long. But yeah, I forgot to look back at the title, and that makes complete sense now. So that is it's a currency transfer machine. But we don't know why it takes so long. But anyway. Yeah, paid in dollars but need pesos to buy food. David Cook says there seems to be a change from viewing with disgust and then seeing their dignity. Yeah. Mark Gruner says, I think it's an ATM where people are withdrawing money for their use, and the point being that they are satisfied with very little instead of being threatening. Jim Langford said it made me think of the three wise men. And Sharon French says maybe shorten up the descriptions of the people. In any language, the poem is so humbling. Very nice. Yeah, it is. I like the story. A long line waiting. Yeah, maybe it's just a long line, and maybe that's what it is. Anyway, so the things that sort of throw us out are the grammatical issues that the poem has, and it probably does feel too long for what it's doing. And so like details like these, the year was 2019, like that's unnecessary. And there are other things like that too. The night was cold and breezy. Everyone was busy buying Noche Buena groceries, cars buzzing in and out the streets, brightened up by lanterns shaped like twinklers in the sky. I got a good description there. Didn't point that out, but I like that description. There was a woman walking and searching for the nearest money puking machine. So I do like the money puking machine, but it does add to the confusion. Like we spent a lot of time wondering out what the money puking was, even though it's kind of clear now. But that's a really interesting line that kind of throws you off a little bit. So going back to Greasy here, David Cook says Greasy Karenizes the speaker. The narrator's privilege, misperception might need to be amplified to get the conversation to be clearer. Yeah, I mean, maybe if the looking down on the people were a little stronger, then you'd know sort of that's what's being set up as. And Tom Barlow says if it were a money puking machine, it would do more, or a money conversion machine, it would do more than puke. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's another thing that I wonder if that's a literal translation of something from a different language, in the same way that the idiom at the end is. And money puking should be hyphenated too. Yeah, good point. Anyway, so that is this poem here, and that is two poems by Brian Broñola. It was the 2,000 pesos, $40 and role-playing game of reality. And then the first two poems were by Annabelle Narey. We had Interplanetary Contact, which is a really fun poem. A lot of descriptions, just tightening up a little bit. And then again, an interesting poem here about overheard in the woods, with the trees meeting the soft earth again, which I really liked the ending. So some stuff to play with there too. So good stuff. A lot of stuff you can work on in both of these two poems. They're poems with good content going on. Now let us really quickly do this randomizer. And so there were I don't know how many it was, because some people put in twice, but there was 100 or so names here. And I'm pasting it in to random.org's list randomizer. These are all the people who have submitted. And then we will click randomize, and we'll get one of the two people. So we have Daniel Ernie, Maria, Julie, Anne, Kulabar, Nicole Amador, Kimberly McNeil, and Tamara Rate. I think we'll do the next 6. Attracta Fahey, because Attracta's here a lot, so let's do that. So we'll do those for the next 6 weeks, and I'll put them with somebody else too to make a good pair, so we have a good amount of stuff to talk about. And that is going to be your next critique victims from the list randomizer. And that is your critique of the week today. Thanks much for joining me. It is always a pleasure to do these. And next week's guest, or this weekend's guest, I should say, on the Rattlecast is going to be Jim Daniels. Jim Daniels is speaking of storytelling, he's a great storyteller, is a poet. Gun-Shy is a book sort of looking back at life and telling a lot of stories from childhood and things like that. A lot of wisdom in this book. I was just reading it last night. Really good stuff from Jim Daniels. He's author of many, many books. We published him a good number of times. And his newest book from Wayne State University Press is Gun-Shy. So we'll be talking to him Sunday, December 12th at noon Eastern Time. And the prompt for this week was to take a walk, right? I never updated that page either. So it was to take a walk. That's right. It was definitely to take a walk. Take a walk around your neighborhood, or drive in a car, or sit on your porch and watch the world go by. But take a walk and observe what's going on and write a poem from that. So it's a walk-based. What do they call those? Where you take an adventure somewhere. That's what you want to do. And that is going to be your prompt for Sunday, Rattlecast number 122, with Jim Daniels as the main guest. Sunday, December 12th, noon Eastern Time. Hope to see you then, and hope you have a great weekend in the meantime. Goodbye.